Welcome to the F+L podcast. My name is Vicky Denton and I'm your host. Our guest today is Sofia Öberg. Sofia is from Gothenburg, Sweden, and she wears many hats. So, first, we'll describe her as an entrepreneur, and then she can explain what else she can do. She has a long history in um, audits, environmental work, and most recently, she started a second company that is involved in directly with our industry. So let me welcome to the show, Sofia.
Hi, thank you so much for introducing me so nicely and for giving this opportunity. Very nice.
You're welcome. So, Sophia, let's start with perhaps tell us about yourself. You told me earlier that as a teenager, you actually started your own business, and that's how you got into this, multifaceted career.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I didn't remember I even told you, but yes, I did start a firm, or well, it wasn't that official, but we did have a logo and everything for our babysitting club. So me and my friend Lovisa, we did our well work already then, and had different clients, the family owners that wanted to have support with their babysitting. Yeah.
And I assume it was quite lucrative, right?
Well, yeah, but at that time I didn't know that much about running a company. So, but we were really happy with the results, and we could go into town and buy ourselves some clothes and then eat on the restaurant. So that was a big thing. So, yes, we were happy about the result. Yeah. Mm.
So you went into natural science first, and then you eventually graduated with a master's degree in environmental science from the University of Gothenburg, where actually you continue to live as of
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, that's right. I did move some in within Sweden to another part before, but I ended up coming back to Gothenburg. I really like this part of Sweden with the coast and uh, close to other uh, natural areas you can go. Both for actually, it's not that far from skiing as well, and you have the sea and everything. So, and we have a lot of friends still here, so that was why we ended up staying. Yes.
So you started a new company in 2019. It's called
Yeah, that's correct.
2Probity. Tell us
Yeah.
what 2Probity is.
Well, 2Probity is a third-party registration organization. You can to be able to check and have a third party checking the information. So actually, it's a service to make sure that serious companies can be able to verify that they are doing it correctly. And it's for non-food compounds, so different chemicals that, and also oil and different lubricants or greases that may be used linked to the food industry. And then you have different regulations in the US FDR. So the Food and Drug Administration has set a set of rules, you could say. So we are supporting the companies to make sure that this is actually followed. And then they can have their own marks. For example, H1, that is used a lot for different lubricants and greases. And then that would be a safe way of knowing that this is not contaminating the food that might be in contact with this. So that's what we do.
Who are your clients, Sophia? Are they mostly Swedish companies, or are they Nordic
Mm,
companies, or are they EU companies?
It's actually all over the world this is used. So, but I have since I started here, and it's been just before the pandemic. So I kind of didn't have that uh, good chance of getting out there in the beginning, and now it's much better. So at the moment, I have been more in the EU market when different gatherings where we also met in Athens, for example. So that's why I have a lot of clients in the EU, but it's not that many in Sweden. I can have more, but it's actually more in other countries in within the EU mainly. But I do have some in Asia as well, and not that many at all in the US though. So I would say it's a global possible global market. Yes, it is.
You mentioned US FDA, the Food and Drug Administration.
Yes.
So, is there an equivalent organization in the EU or in Sweden or in the Nordic states?
No. There are of course my biggest competitors here is the NSF, which are they are giant, of course. But I felt when I started this, it's also why I started it, because otherwise they would have a monopoly, and I feel this is not a good thing in any market to have a monopoly. So I felt like I had a chance and I had an experience that is suitable for this. So I thought this would be a positive thing to try out, and it ended up very well. I am really happy about that. I did take the leap and did do that. So that's the only competitor at the moment, and I do have collaborations with them actually, because I feel like the same thing for certificate bodies. We are on the same market. We need to be talking to each other about the different evaluations, so we're not, you know, doing different evaluations and assessments. So that's important to have that too. So I wouldn't shut the door at all. I would say it's good to have competition within the markets.
Yes. So you mentioned H1. Tell us what H1 is.
So H1 is a marking that makes the buyer and the user of your products ensure that this can be used for incidental food contacts. So if you have a food processing, then you can use this product to uh, lubricate your different machinery, for example, and not be concerned of contaminating any kind of food product that might get any contact to that product. So it might drip a little bit into the pot or whatever you have, or in the dough, or well, something. But that would be fine, because then we have checked that any kind of ingredient in this product is according to the regulations, and that is considered safe and not going to contaminate the final product, what we might be eating. So the bun that's coming out of the oven, coming to us, it's going to be fine. So this is also why I started the company, because I like this part, to ensure that we are helping out in one part of the process of making it a safe food for everyone. So that's the marking H1.
Is there really an agency that tracks whether a lubricant or a grease or a cleaning fluid um, does not come into contact with food or has incidental contact with food? I mean, what's the body that oversees that? Okay, I claim such my product meets this specification. Who checks if I am actually meeting them?
I would say that there are different authorities in different countries that do these checks, but it's also if you're also certified for example, ISO 21469, another it's a standard for ensuring that your process and in your production is actually looking at the different risks of contamination of your product. So if you have that kind of work, and as well as I would say quality certifications like ISO 9001, that also lifts different regulations and requirements on your product, then that would also be included to make sure that your product is actually following in the different regulations that it should be. So in those senses, you would say then you have a certificate body as well that will look into this. So that's examples of who will be looking at it. And of course, if you have a mishap and something happens and someone is testing the final product and finding out that that contaminant is there, they will backtrack and see where does this come from, of course. And then you don't want to be the one that's been sending the wrong kind of lubricants then or greases. So then you can say, okay, but this is not me. I have been ensuring that my product is okay, it's safe. So if they're backtracking and blaming the lubricants, then you could say, well, this has been checked by a third party. It's not even me saying it. It's, oh, well, in this case, it's me, but the client could say, this has been checked in someone that's independent, that doesn't have a reason to approve anything but the correct ones. So I would say that it's also us as a customer that's also possibly one that's checking and wanting authorities to check even more.
I'm counting, with everything you said, at least five different organizations that may be involved in this whole process.
Mm.
Or is that too small? It could actually be a bigger set of, regulators and agencies
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
into
of
it.
course. Yeah, and it depends on how many markets are your products going to be used in. If it's going to be used in many markets, then you have a lot of different authorities, maybe having different ideas, different regulations, even national differences. So, of course, there might be a lot of, well, different interested parties in this question, and it's of course a hot topic, you could say. uh, Contaminants in food, no one wants it, right? We want to have healthy and good food. Of course we want. That's what, anyone would answer. Yes, of course we want. Or do you want someone that's putting contaminants in this in throughout the process? Of course not. So this is an a question for anyone to say yes, of course we want to have this. But going back, it might be very hard for a lubricant industry or a lubricant supplier to show that it's not my product, because sometimes I feel now when I'm coming into this industry more and more, I feel like this industry is blamed a lot for things that might not be even their fault. So looking at it that way, I feel like it's something that the industry needs to work with, and I'm happy to support that. And I do understand that sometimes the industry, with all the discussions, for example, with environment and resources, of course, it's targeted already a little bit. So I would say that this is just another thing to keep track of, uh, and possibly a very crucial one if you end up supplying your product when something like that would happen, that someone says, oh, but my bun that tested is uh, does include this bad contaminant. Well, I'm sure it's the greases we used. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's something else within the process that happens before it comes to your table. So yeah, I think that's a big challenge for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, once you have a food recall or a drug recall for that matter, um, it's obviously a big deal. We've
Mm.
seen that's happened quite a bit. The food processing industry alone is a huge industry. Do you only deal with the packaged goods, or is it like even fresh produce would also have to deal with um, this kind of problem? Because I mean,
Yeah, you could take water, for example. Well, that's you need to make sure that there's no contaminants when you have producing water, even though you have a good source. It's the best water ever. We've tested it and it's even healthy for you. But of course, you have to kind of put it in containers and somehow bottle it. And then you have machines that needs to be entertained and serviced and everything. Of course, you do need that. So yeah, you don't even have to bake a bun to use any of these things. So you have just bottling water. Then you might need to ensure that you have, for example, H1 approved lubricants or greases.
So far, Sophia, what's been your experience in our industry? What's been the most challenging aspect of entering a new field for you? Because you've been a consultant for many years, 20 something years, going into this new business. In a way, it's not new,
Mm,
as you mentioned, because a lot of the customers of lubricant companies are actually industries that you've been working with for a long time. But what
yeah,
makes it different or special?
I would say um, it's a very small industry somehow, which I really appreciate. It's a lot of people know each other and they meet up, and I hope to be some of those into that circle as well. I'm working on it, and it's really enjoying the company of the people I'm meeting. It's actually interesting to meet a lot of nice people. I would say anyone that I've been talking to has been very nice and uh, well, they care, you care about each other. I would say in some other industries I feel like it's more, of course there are competitions, but it's a different way. So I do appreciate that, which is a little bit surprising. I didn't know that, so that's very fun to experience. So I'm very intrigued and wanting to explore this more, because I do feel welcomed, so that's very nice. But of course, I do. But I have had lubricants and greases in companies as clients before, so that's kind of why I kind of get the idea, you could say, of starting the company as well. But what's challenging is, of course, the, I would say, the possibility to meet people, to be, because I'm a person that is I would say better in person. I like to talk to people and connect a bit more. And of course, when you have a market that's global, it's a new challenge for me, because that's nothing I've been experiencing that way. Here, when I started my consultancy firm, I started small and then built that up. And then at the moment, we have clients, well, mainly in Sweden, but also other countries as well. But then I built on network and meeting people and clients recommending us again or to someone else. And that's how I kind of work with 2Probity as well. But that takes time. And also, since the market is so much bigger, it's hard to get a possibility to meet everyone that you want to. So
Yeah.
that's
Yes. How do you juggle this? Because yesterday when I was talking to you, you were driving and you were heading to an audit, and you
yeah.
you you finished pretty late. You said you have three sons. I assume they're very much involved in sports and school. How do you juggle all this? And then you have two companies. You have a consulting firm, and you have this new company that started up just before the pandemic that you're growing. Um, you must have a
Well,
lot of energy.
well, I like what I'm doing. That's one thing. I do like my job. I enjoy doing my work. So of course, I like going to work on Monday. That's one thing. And I do have a lot of fantastic people around me, because I would never be where I am at today without the people around me. And that has been switching somewhat during these 20 years. I've been running the companies and also with 2Probity as well. but I'm very happy to be finding new good people that are joining me on my ride, you could say. And some has been, of course, at home it's my husband and his parents and my parents that, well, we're pitching in and they are helping out. So of course I need that, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So that's on the private side, I would say that's a crucial part. But here, if you take it professionally for the company, I would say that I have a lot of great people around me, both employed and as a subcontractor, or maybe in my network that I can just pick up the phone and call. Oh, do you know I have this question? Can you help me out? And they do that, and I'm really have a lot of support that way. So that's how I kind of do it. But I do appreciate to go out and also take my time to recover, you could say, by, for example, going as we did just the other week when the kids were off from school, going skiing, for example, or doing activities with my families, kind of, or traveling. That's a kind of, you say, a ventilator or something for me to recharge a bit.
Yes. So we've had, of course, the pandemic, and we're just coming out of it. Maybe Sweden is a little bit more advanced than the rest of the world because you approach the pandemic completely differently from everyone else.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
would you
and
say you were right that that was the right approach?
well, I would say that it was right for us here. It worked well. Well, depending on how you see it, of course. I would say it worked very well for us. We did work a lot from home, mainly from home, all of us, but we weren't isolated. So we could get the kids could go to school, they could go to daycare. We could have a little bit of a normal life, you could say. You weren't isolated. So you got the kind of social interactions. So I think that's very important for your mental health, and that supports also your other health. So maybe that was good, but of course it's also different in different countries. You don't have all the same possibilities and not the same structures on the different cities, and well, it's just different. So I don't know if I would say that Sweden did everything right. We didn't. No one can say that you knew what to do, but some of it really worked for us in Sweden because we have, well, our system of the society, and maybe it's not the same in other countries. So hard to say. I would say a mix of everything would be probably the best. Now when we can evaluate, maybe we could face it better. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to get your perspective on this. You've been working in this area, management audits, environmental standards, now relating to food or non-food, meaning the lubricants and
Yeah.
greases. Tell us how much the environment has changed, not necessarily just for Sweden, but also within the EU, because you do deal within the EU for the most part.
Yeah.
And did Brexit have any impact on your business, or would you say did it have any impact on the way
Mhm.
things were being done?
Yeah, I would say the Brexit might have been more an impact for other sectors than the environmental sector. Um, since the UK has been kind of adopting a little bit what the EU had already. Of course, there are some changes, I would say, for different administrational questions. But other than that, I don't say that it was that big of a difference. But of course, there are other things, other aspects, financially or for employment and other things that, of course, is more affected, I would say. But in the EU, and if I look at my 20 years here, I I usually I do I did reflect on that because I had a 20th anniversary last year. So I did reflect on what have happened, during my period this far. And I would say that when I finished school, when I finished university, I got questions like, "Oh, how do I sort this kind of waste?" Oh, yeah, well, you can do this, and I would get those questions, and I still get those questions, but now it's linked to maybe circular economy. So I would say that the questions has been evolving during these years. So yes, the humankind is evolving. This is good. So the questions also within the EU and also within the companies has been evolved. So it's still we are still looking at maybe the mm, same focus area, but in another way. So nowadays we're talking more about circular economy, or we're talking about sustainability and looking at the product. How can I reuse this product more? How can I design this product to make sure it's going to be used better in the next step? Or maybe not, if I need to have a portion of this product, how can I make sure that it's not overused? So it's going to be spillage. I mean, all those kind of things is more design. So now it's moved both back and forth, I would say, in the process. So the questions are more included in the whole process, which is great, I would say, because if you have to start in also in the beginning as well as handling what we have. And if you're talking about pandemic, my view and also some of the people I talk to is that the EU politicians had more time away from Brussels, but they were working from home. They were not traveling, so they had a lot of more time to work. I don't know, it's just a totally own idea. And then they were kind of spitting out a lot of documents, and they were getting all things done, and they could get meetings arranged much easier because people didn't get, didn't have to find a time where everyone needs to be at the same place. So they were more efficient. So also the legislation that we see at the moment just popping up is, I think, maybe also some of the results of the work done during the pandemics, because they've had time
I
to
think that's a
really
very
work.
good observation. I certainly agree with you because, you know, it's been enormous, right? I mean,
Yes, yes,
everything
it
seemed to
is.
go so fast during the pandemic of all times, right?
Yeah, yeah. And also there are quite big leaps that, for example, EU is planning. And of course, you can discuss if it's the correct decision, if it's the sustainable way to do it. And well, I do, I do have the environmental sense, but um, if you could say, I also have the business approach. I'm not the tree hugger, but do understand the tree huggers, but I also do understand the business. So I'm kind of meddling between the tree huggers and the businesses. That's pretty much why I usually end up. So I do want all of the good things with sustainable development and environmental issues, but I do understand that we might not be able to take some leaps because it's putting problems in front of different important industries and the companies' work. So I would say that we are facing a lot of new possibilities, but also some tough challenges with all the different changes within the EU and others as well, because also you have other things. For example, in China, they change now for the other. They are also putting up other new regulations for food um, for coatings, for example, that are going to be in plastics or something that's also coming. So it's a lot of things, not only within the EU, that's making a lot of challenges for the companies. but we're all striving for pretty much the same thing. It's like we want to have healthy and good food. Of course, we do. And we want to have a good future for everyone. Yeah. But how to do that is quite, of course, a big question to solve. Yeah.
Last question, Sophia. What's the role of management audits in the whole thing? Um, I mean, of course, we know what the purpose of an audit is, right? To validate a claim that you're making.
Yeah.
Um, does it really make for a better process, a better product, a better environment?
I would say that it's depending on both the management ideas and their willingness of striving towards their possibilities to do right and maybe not looking at money all the time. Maybe quarterly reports might not be the correct way if you're talking about sustainability environment. It might be needing a longer perspective because the changes aren't that quick. So of course it's always up to the management in the company to make sure that the strategies and the SWOT or whatever you want to do to find your opportunities and risks is very crucial. But it's also the auditor. Because if you have an auditor, you could have a great auditor that is lifting the ideas of new things that the management hasn't been thinking about, maybe, and opening up a new door for them. So that would be helping the company forward. But of course, if you have an auditor that is more there to visit and not just checking a box and making sure that you don't get that much work afterwards so you don't put down any non-conformities, maybe that's not going to be the same result. So I would say that it's both ways. If you have a certificate that you want to be using in the right way, you have a possibility to do that. But both management and the auditor and the certificate body needs to do their part.
Everyone's very concerned about product carbon footprint. Who
Yeah.
audits a company's claim about their scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions?
Well, that I would say is you need to keep to the standards that are there to be able to compare your figures. Because if you're using the wrong baseline, then you're comparing totally different things. So then you might be putting down a lot of effort and money into something that's not going to be worth anything in the end. So I would say that using the standards that are there for the calculations, and that's one main thing to be able to put your money on the right horse, you could say. So scope 1 and 2 is one thing, but scope 3 is very tough to do by yourself, I would say, unless you have a very skilled team or person in your company. So I would suggest that might be good to get support there from someone that's really good at calculating those things.
And what advice do you have for our industry? I mean, I think it's nice that you haven't been with the industry for a long time. You can look at it from afar and say, if only these guys knew something. What's your advice?
You know a lot of things. I mean, you are an industry that has a lot of knowledge within it. So that's for sure. So I would say that you need to use the knowledge in maybe a new perspective sometimes and look at the market that's coming. I would say that you have a lot of new customers, new decision makers that are coming up, a new generation of those that is not the same as it's been. Of course, that's the same in any generation switch, but the ones that are coming up, making decisions, they want to make sure that they are taking a sustainable decision many times. They are choosing their employment linked to what kind of work is the company doing. Is this a company that has a sustainable strategy or not? Maybe that would be yes or no for them. Oh, well, doesn't matter. I won't work with that kind of company. So the industry, as I said, is kind of targeted already, linked to all the questions linked to environment and the problems we're actually facing at the moment. So, of course, you need to kind of turn that around and show the benefits of the products you have, the energy efficiency you can contribute with, or other things. You need to be better at communicating that, I think, to make sure that you can lure the good people, the talented people to your company for the future, pretty much, and also be able to sell your product.
I think that's a very good point. I think that um, maybe we don't talk enough about the solutions that we can provide to
Yeah.
everyone. I mean, because
uh,
everyone needs lubricants, right?
Yeah, and you have been doing that for so many years. You have already some of the answers, but I don't think that people know it. I didn't know all of that when I came into it. It's still very interesting for me to listen to all of the different people I encounter and see, oh, I didn't think about that aspect. So I kind of learn all the time, and I feel like you have so much to give. So I would say that that's the main thing. Try to give back and show what you can do.
Well, Sophia, you've been a very refreshing person to speak with tonight. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
your time. And we look forward to linking up with you even more in the coming years.
Yeah, I hope so. Really, really. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye bye.